Hello, everybody. It feels like Christmas in November, and your broskies in basketball are here to break down the opening night slate of the college basketball season. It's here, baby. Recording live from somewhere. This is One and Done.
Get out the insurance cards, get out the copays. The office is open, my friends. Brought to you by drroto.com.
It's time once again for everybody to come aboard that Green Screens Media train. What is up? Welcome into the One and Done opening slate show powered by drroto.com. I am your humble host. My name is Jay Heinrich. You can follow me on X at Dr. William Cannon, but let's get right to the broskies in basketball. I mentioned previously, let's get right to El Capitan himself. You can find that man on X at MC Holland34, the captain of the Green Screens Media Ship, the OG Money Mike. That is Mr. Mike Holland. What it do, baby?
What up? I'm excited. I'm ready for tomorrow. It's finally here. I'm actually tired of looking at this DraftKings slate. I'm almost ready for another slate, but I'm locked in. I'm loaded, and I'm ready to have a big year.
You know who else is ready to have a big year? Our guy Eric the Blue. You can find him in those Twitter streets at Fantasy Nav. He is the Baron of Bread of Green Screens Media. That is Eric Aromoff. What's happening?
College basketball is back. We are here breaking down the first slate of the season. We got a 12-gamer in store. We already have a number of different ways to qualify for the King of the Bracket tournament at the end of the season. I can't believe that we're finally here. But what I can believe is that Kalen is right here with us, ready to go straight to the veins. We got plenty of familiar faces. We got Jody back. We got Corey back. Everyone is ready to get out here and start printing some money, start seeing these green screens as soon as slate number one.
No doubt about it. First tip of the year, we get a 12-game DK slate tipping at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Hope you set your clocks back with daylight savings so you don't miss the tip there. 10K to first come in. Got a little 10K to first action. We got the King of the Bracket, seat number one, which is a $95 entry. Guys, get in the satellites. Get in that King of the Bracket, seat one. Hop along with us as we go along this ride. All season long, we'll be doing this. Follow all these handles on Twitter. Follow our guy at The Real Napier, our guy Chris doing stuff behind the scenes for us, little digital stuff. Our top 20 countdown on YouTube here and on, what's it called? Oh, yeah, TikTok as well at Get Green Screens over there. At One and Done CBB is the show page here, right there, scrolling across the screen, right on time. But let's not wait any longer. Make sure you smash those like and subscribe buttons. Drop something in the live chat. We see you hanging out there watching on YouTube with us. Say hey as we get a few thoughts on tonight's slate. We're going to hit a little overview here. I'm going to go ahead and start with, let's go to Mike first on sort of the general overview for this opening night slate.
Well, of course, on opening night, we would have pretty much the top 5 of our top 20 countdown on the slate, right? All the big guys. So I think for me, man, it's like lock in the stud forwards, find the value on these mid-major guards, and move right along. So that's kind of the strategy I'm looking at. We'll dive into that a little bit as we go through, but I'm interested to hear Eric's thoughts.
Stud forwards, how you doing? Keep it moving. That's what Mike's doing here. Eric, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, this slate's kind of interesting, right? You know, a lot of people, a lot of teams, I should say, in the top 25 that are going to be on the board, and as such, a lot of kind of one-sided games out there, right? So finding the right way to attack the heavier side of those games is going to be crucial, but also it's only the first game of the season, but we have to keep an eye out for late news, right? Late news is always going to be critical in the game of CBB DFS. So got to use your utility spots wisely. Got to make sure that you keep an ear to the ground one of the best ways to do that is to follow us again on Twitter at One and Done CBB. We're tweeting out the news as we find it, and we will be giving a little bit of insight as to the fantasy impact of that. And also, before we jump all the way into the slate, we have a new commenter popping in. T Thuggin, ready for some CBB DFS. Thanks for hosting this. Thank you for swinging through. We appreciate you popping in.
How do you know it's not CT Huggin? You know, it could be Thuggin. You know, CT Huggin. Either way,
that's Eric's Houston streets coming out.
Yeah, let us know if you're CT Huggin. We'll embrace. We'll all give you a big old hug.
But if you're Thuggin, that's cool with us too. Whatever, man. Thanks for dropping a line in the chat. We appreciate it. As always, hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Tonight, let's hop into this slate, though, gents. We have 4 showcase games. Okay, so if you're new to One and Done DFS shows, we usually like to do some showcase games, some of the higher totals that we're going to hit, some of the key players in those showcase games, and then we're going to break it down later on with some tiers, sort of 7,500 and above, 5,000 to 7,400, and then lower tiers after that, sort of some key plays, some numbers that jump out to us. So what we're going to do first are those showcase games on this 12-game slate, 12-game slate, tipping, there we go, at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Again, all the numbers that you're going to hear today, these are all either KenPom projections, KenPom point total. These are all the numbers you'll hear will be based off of KenPom, including Cal State Fullerton at San Diego State, 132 on that total. We might not.
In the hammer.
Might not. Yeah, in the hammer, of course. Yeah, last game of the night. We may not spend just a ton of time talking about maybe not. Maybe not. But, you know, games like Samford and Purdue, 144 total. Northern Illinois Marquette, 147. We're going to hit some of these games and then some players throughout as well. Gents, before we hop in here, anything jumping out to you about these totals real quickly before we jump into the USC-Kansas State matchup? These totals, high, low, about right for this point of the season. What are y'all feeling about this?
I'll go first. I think they're interesting. I'm more concerned with the lines, but you know, early in the college basketball season, like in the NBA, like blowouts, like you're just upset by the middle of the third quarter, right? But actually in CBB, especially mid-major guys that are playing the power conference teams, they're just going to keep their starters out there up until the end of the game, regardless if it's a 25, 30-point blowout. And a lot of times some of the power conference teams will keep their guys out there up until maybe the 2-minute mark. So shouldn't be as much concern. It's more of like the coaches that run big rotations. So like Alabama is like scary to me. We'll talk about them here in a little bit. You know, Northern Illinois, we have some injury news we have to watch out for. They got a couple of studs, but they didn't play in their last exhibition game. So we'll talk about that. But yeah, I think the lines are okay. I just hate that the hammer is 132 from Cal State Fullerton and San Diego State. So it really feels like the USC Kansas State game at 143 may be the true hammer. And then also we're going to go through these showcase games, but yeah. Honestly, we typically like a 2-1, 2-2 stack, sometimes 3-2 stacks. I don't know if that's going to happen tomorrow. I just don't know. But we'll talk about it as we kind of go through the showcase games.
Yeah, why don't we jump in right into those showcase games now? We put it off long enough here. Let's start right with USC and Kansas State, our first showcase game with a 143-point implied total. The KenPom predicted score, USC up 72-71 in this one. Preseason KenPom rankings for USC, 25th projected offensive efficiency, 19th in defensive efficiency, and 145th in tempo. Lot to like there with those numbers early on with offensive and defensive efficiency, Mike, pulling up the slate there. So again, with a total like this, when you know they're going to be efficient with their offense and their defense, who are you looking at here to open it up for the Trojans?
Yeah, I'm looking at this game and really both sides as maybe a one-off type situation. So let me start with the normal guys at the top, right? Like Boogie Ellis, 7,800. I think that's a decent price for his talent. He's going to be a contrarian play because of the position, and paying up at the guard position is going to be contrarian. So like these stud guards, they're not going to be as owned as the stud forwards. But the problem is there's an opportunity cost when you play one of these guys, right? That's just one of the stud bigs that you are not going to play. obviously Ellis is going to have big usage. I'm probably going to have I think right now I've got like 20 lineups. So I'm probably going to end up with like 30 or 40. So I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 shares of Ellis. Some interest in Isaiah Collier down here at 7,000. Man, like he's a superstar freshman, a consensus like top 2 player coming out of high school. I was hoping he'd be a little bit cheaper. I was hoping to get him for like 6,000. That's what you're going to find us, kind of going through a lot of these games and teams. It's like, man, we just wish they were a little bit cheaper to start the season. So pricing's pretty tight. I don't mind him as a discount from Ellis, but we haven't seen him at this level. So a little interesting. And then really only a guy that sticks out to me is Josh Morgan, 6,800, super contrarian at the forward position. I don't even know that I'm going to get to him. He averaged 24 fantasy points last year. So like if you want to, maybe in some type of 2-1 game stack, okay. But I just don't know that I can really get to anybody outside of maybe a couple of shares of Ellis and a couple of shares of Collier, and that's about it for me. Eric, what are your thoughts on this USC side?
Yeah, I've got a pretty similar look, right? All the players we haven't talked about here, Boogie Ellis is probably going to be the most popular on the USC side, but is not necessarily looking to draw a bunch of rostership, right? So, looking through the rest of the starting lineup here, we've got Kobe Johnson. He's a pivot off of Ellis, but with Ellis not being all that popular, you're not getting a whole lot of leverage by pivoting off of him is probably the best way to put it. And like you mentioned, 6.9K, like that's pretty tight. We've seen Johnson drop 30 burgers before, but even that type of ceiling game isn't exactly going to get it done. So, there are better value plays out there, and you don't really need the leverage off of Ellis. And then looking over at the forward side, the player that you didn't mention here, we've got DJ Rodman. Again, will be very unpopular because of how much we're expecting people to pay up at the forward position. So, a contrarian way to do it, but that this pricing isn't great, right? Like 6.7K. Yes, Rodman, he gives this team a little bit of shooting, but realistically, he's probably about $1,000 more than he should be. So I'm kind of bummed with the pricing on this game in particular because I wanted to get into it, but I mean, tip of the hat to DraftKings. They came out with a pretty tight book to open the season.
Collier and Rodman are both at least $1,000 overpriced, I feel. Like, I just don't.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to mix them in more than once, probably a piece. And this is tough with the total, the 72 points projected total. That's not too shabby. And if you hit the right player in this one, it's just like you're throwing darts here, right?
Yeah.
And that's sort of we say that a lot. We're gonna, throwing darts or flip a coin or whatever you want to call it on any given night with some of these rosters. And USC is definitely an example. That looks like we got another comment here coming in. What do we got?
We've got a little clarification. He is both thuggin' and huggin', as we should all aspire to be. Great point. Glad to have you in.
Let's go. Excellent. Thanks for the clarification there. We'll go back and forth too as often as we see you. So don't you worry. Thanks for dropping that line in there. We appreciate it. The other side of this first showcase game, of course, is Kansas State. Those pesky Wildcats. 71-point implied total. KenPom preseason rankings here, or preseason projections should say. 37th offensive efficiency, 17th in defensive efficiency, 35th in tempo. A lot to like here. And anytime Kansas State is on a slate, we're going to be hitting on them for sure. Starters last exhibition, which doesn't always mean everything here, but Perry Carter, Kaluma Manning, and Gusson, trying to figure this out here. Tomlin suspended indefinitely, so we'll see where we go with this. But I'm going to go ahead and start with Mike again here on the Kansas State side this time. Who do you like here for the Wildcats?
For me, I like Cam Carter a lot. He's 6,700 at the guard position. Watch their last exhibition game, the first half. He's going to have a bigger role offensively now that Tomlin is suspended. He's going to kind of slide into that third piece of their big three role now. maybe a big 2.5. We'll see how he plays to start the season. But he's probably the guy that I'm most interested in. I don't like the price. It's kind of similar to the USC guys. Like Tyler Perry is there. He's $8K. Yeah, I don't know that I can get to maybe 1 or 2 shares in case he goes for like a 41 or something to start the year. I mean, another contrarian, like pay up guard. So he's probably going to lead the team in usage. I don't know, man. Like it's kind of scary. Taj Manning, he's 4,000. He was in the starting lineup, but I mean, the usage is probably not going to be there for him. So if you want to get cute, I mean, maybe, but there's just so much value that we're going to talk about that I don't think you really need to go here. So, I mean, if I had to pick somebody and you want somebody in like a hammer situation, or you want somebody that could potentially be a breakout that hopefully not a lot of people are on, like Cam Carter is certainly interesting, man. Like he looked pretty good in that last game.
If you're going to pay up, though, I think if you're going to pay up for a guard on this slate, I think Perry definitely has to be in the consideration for it. Like you said, Mike, just the usage alone can lend to that huge explosion and get you to where you need to be. So, yeah, Eric, anybody else here on this slate? Kaluma, Mike hadn't talked about yet. I feel like he'd be pretty interesting. And then maybe somebody down on lower salaries.
Yeah, Kaluma is kind of interesting, right? He came here for a bigger role. I expect he will step into that fairly quickly. And what makes him more interesting is that he's a direct pivot off of, some of the guys in the 8K range, right? We're going to talk about Klingon later. We're going to talk about Nelson later. You can create a little leverage going to Kaluma off of those guys. He'll be in the player pool, but he's not really someone that I'm super excited about clicking the button on just because of this price tag again, right? Like pricing is really tight for this first slate, and I just think there are better spots. Looking elsewhere in on this side of the game. I mean, if you're looking for a salary saver, you can go down to Dai Ames, right? 3K flat. Certainly nothing wrong with that. Gives you a lot of flexibility to pay up at that, at the variety of forward spots that we want to get into. In the preseason, he looked pretty good. Someone that, we might be able to, see a little bit more run as the year goes on. But, with Day Ames, like we're going to be kind of rolling the dice until we see how they use him on the court. But, a 3K risk isn't the worst way to kick off the season for the KSU side.
Listen, if you do decide to go Perry and you like this total, you like the tempo, you like the way that this game's going to get up and down, and you do want to get a little weird, Perry and Ames doubling them up here in this matchup is something that not a lot of players are probably going to end up doing. So it's a way to get different, a way to save some salary there. And yeah, Day, of course, would probably make my all-name team and probably second team range in there, ish. But love for Day for sure. Let's hit those comments. See them rolling in tonight. What do we got? Johnny K.
New. What's up, Johnny? Welcome in.
Johnny. Yeah, Kaluma's going to rock out this year. Even better fit than in Creighton. Well, he definitely popped over to get some more runs. So I think we're gonna find that out, Johnny. But yeah, thanks for dropping in the comments there. We appreciate that. First timer with the Clemson, it looked like. And Jody hanging in. Talon needs to straighten up. He could shine there this year. Yeah, guys.
I'm worried about him, man. Like there was talk that, I don't know. Maybe it's just coach speak, right? Like what did Coach say at the end of Coach Tang? He was like, we're gonna treat him like he's out for the year. It's like, I don't know if he's just saying that so he buttons him up, but like, geez.
Right. Treat him like he's out for the year, and anything we get out of him is a bonus or a plus or whatever sort of thing. I don't really like to hear that, but like you said, Mike, maybe it's just that getting him right, and okay, they'll, sometime in mid-December he will have done everything and get good on his grades and all that stuff, and he had to prove himself again, and we'll see for sure. But thank you, Jody and Johnny, right? Johnny, for dropping a line in those comments. We appreciate that for sure. Jumping on now to the second game, and while we're previewing this, make sure you drop a line in the comments as well for us if you're hanging out tonight with your old broskies in basketball, the old one and done crew here. Appreciate you for doing that. Missouri State at West Virginia. You knew it was coming. I didn't even country
I
road.
forgot
It's
it was
coming.
coming.
I'll do the whole thing later on. Okay, let's start off with Missouri State though. In this matchup, 65-point projected total here. 134th offensive efficiency is the preseason provocation, I guess. Is that the right word? Prediction, I guess. They camp on that for them. 159th in defense. 348th in both starters last exhibition. Lee Mason, Moore, Clay, and Benson. Starting with Mike again here. All right, you heard me say 348th in tempo, but if there's West Virginia will get it going a little bit for them here, but still some points going to be scored. So which one of these Bears of Missouri State should we be focusing on?
Yeah, West Virginia coming in at projected 137th in tempo, so a big pace-up spot for the Missouri State guys. I may have a real hot take on betting in this game, but let's start with Missouri State. Donovan Clay, 7,700. I mean, he's the best player on the team, super versatile. He's guard and forward eligible on the DraftKings slate. Once again, guys, this might be a boring show to start. I promise it'll get better. I don't know that I can click this. Like, even if they score 70 points, like, it doesn't excite me to, one, roster him as a forward, and two, like at the guard. Like, I feel like I'd rather pay for Ellis at 7,800 or get to Perry, obviously, at 8,000. So it doesn't feel great. Matthew Lee is probably a little more interesting, at least to me, at 4,600. He should be enrolled for a larger, usage rate. And I don't know. Like, he's going to be on the floor. He's another cheap pivot option. The problem is the ceiling, right? Like, I don't know if I'll at the end of the night I'll look back and say, oh man, Matthew Lee got 27 fantasy points, and you're trying to beat 3,600 teams tomorrow in the big tournament. I don't know that I can 100% go there. The guys that I'll click the button on a few times on this team are NJ Benson and Cesar Edwards, 3,600 and 3,500. Benson's 3,600. He started at the 5 the last exhibition game. It's going to be a tough matchup because we know someone transferred over to West Virginia playing that 5 spot tomorrow. He's really just a large field option, but he's going to be on the floor. Edwards is a transfer from Xavier. So if he comes off the bench again, Benson could get in foul trouble and Edwards is going to get a lot of runs. So it could be important as far as like either blowout minutes or just for him being on the floor due to fouls. So I do like both of these guys potentially. Like, it's not something that I'm going to be clicking heavily on, but I'll probably mix in, 1 out of 40 on both of these guys. So if you're playing mass multi, I would definitely at least get a share of one of these guys. But otherwise, like Eric, man, I'm having a tough time in this one too, man. Maybe it's that 65 implied total there that's kind of scaring me away.
Man, I am thrilled that I have to be the first one to say it's time to spin that wheel. 2 players here on this side that are neck and neck, right? We've got Alston Mason coming in at 5.6K. He's the transfer from OU last year. He chucked it up a fair amount. He averaged double-digit shot attempts last year. The pricing kind of has him in no man's land. And then, right there next to him, $500 discount, you get over to Chance Moore, 5.1K. Similar consideration to Mason, right? He's going to chuck up some shots. Both of these guys should be on the court a fair amount. They should play about 30 minutes or so. Feels like one of them has the potential to hit this kind of 5 or 6X kind of game. That's kind of right on the fringe of where you need him to be in terms of a large tournament, but it's hard to say which of these two, right? So they'll both be in the player pool. There are ways to, get a little bit of salary savings, but I mean, you pick wrong and you're looking at a big hole in your lineup.
Man, you love that starting pitcher as a relief pitcher eligibility that Donovan Clay has. You really like that. But Mike, to your point, like, are you paying 7,700 for the guard, or are you coming down a little bit and pivoting him as a play like that as a forward? And it just doesn't make sense either way to really do it. But spin the wheel. I said everything but spin the wheel earlier. I said throw the darts. I said flip a coin. I said everything except the actual thing that we like to say on this show. But yeah, I mean, like, yeah. All right, here we go. All right. Oh yeah, and that's Mike's teaser. That's what's called a teaser about having some interesting, maybe an interesting bet on this, which will close the show out with our favorite bets or one favorite bet, and yeah, maybe Mike just tease. So all right, West Virginia, country road, take me home to the place. They sang Country Roads in Germany during the Miami KC game. This, of course, they did because it's West Virginia. Mama. We're in mid-season form on our singing, and West Virginia is the team that is bringing the mid-season excitement. We got a little bit of excitement here, boys. Mike said it was starting off a little slow, but we have some plays here for you guys and gals watching for tomorrow's slate here. So 60th offensive efficiency and 69th defensive efficiency. That is a nice projected ranking there, 137th in tempo. Starters last exhibition, Creasa, Wilson, Harris, Aycock. Oh, is obviously Aycock the health scare. They're looking to maybe is there anything on him coming back? Is there a time frame on him? Just getting that guy healthy again?
Yeah, I think they're
not sure when.
Wait and see approach.
Yeah, good deal. You know, shout out to him and hopefully he can return healthy. Creasa is also out for West Virginia. So, Eric, bring some heat here for these Mountaineers. This is not a lot of tippy-toeing around this. Well, he might do good. It just feels like there's just some monster plays in this matchup.
Yeah, it does. You know, we talk about the 74-point implied total, but also you divide that across like the 6 or 7 guys that might be out there tomorrow, and there's a ton of usage for these players to sop up. I'll start with maybe my favorite play on the West Virginia side, arguably on the entire slate. Jesse Edwards at 8.7K. Like it feels like he's absolutely going to destroy this matchup. Looking at his time in the exhibition games during the offseason, played 24 minutes in that last game, but he still had 21 points and 7 boards, right? So like he's going to be on the floor. He's going to be expected to contribute on both ends. Definitely like him as one of my top priorities on the slate. And then, moving down a little bit, you got Quinn Slazinski, 6.6K. He is the straight line pivot off of Edwards if you feel like Edwards might get into, foul trouble. Maybe we're looking at a situation where he's too chalky. You can go over to Slazinski and, get away from that chalk, or at least give yourself some more versatility. Quinn, he played really well after Aycock exited with the injury in that last exhibition game. He's an absolute sharpshooter from 3-point range, solid rebounder, right? So like for me, I think the concern is largely about opportunity cost, right? Like you're certainly not playing Slazinski and Jesse Edwards together, right? So I'm not sure if I feel comfortable leaving the Edwards upside out there, but if you need to pivot, it's certainly there. And then lastly, moving all the way down here, we've got Ofri Nave, a 3.7K forward option. But like I mentioned off the top, like West Virginia, they're rolling out probably 8 guys due to injury with suspensions that are looming out there, right? So, I mean, he'll be out there for a good number of minutes, right? He's someone else that popped off in the exhibition, 27 points, or rather 27 minutes, went for 9, 5, and 3. He replicates that again at this price tag, and you're feeling fine. So, I'm not sure. Not sure if we're going to see, a ton of usage when he's out there, because Edwards is going to play big minutes and have the ball in his hands to a lesser extent, so Slazinski. But in this short rotation, on the West Virginia side, that's implied for 74 points. You can do a lot worse than a 3.7K punt play.
I feel like some of these guards, Mike, are in price points that they're not going to be in for the rest of the season in this game, and I mean, honestly, where do you go here in the middle of this lineup? Like it's tough to just pinpoint anything.
How did we get to these price points? Somebody tell me. How do we like Kobe Johnson 6,300? Like this team is in such a weird spot. Like 7 to 8 guys are going to play. Like if Jesse Edwards gets into foul trouble, like this game is going to get weird. He fouled out in that exhibition game. Like only played 24 minutes. So like all of a sudden you look at this thing. Like we talked about it. Like Raekwon Battle was supposed to be on this team. Jose Perez was supposed to be on this team. Like this whole thing is like, it was one of the top transfer classes. We thought they were going to be a top 15, 20 team. And now it's just all over the place. And now you got Johnson, Josiah Harris is going to be starting. Seth Wilson is going to be starting. Like these guys are 6,300, 6,200, and 6,000 all at the guard position, which is like $1K too expensive for these guys. And so I don't know that I can get to a ton of it. I like Eric's call. Like get to Edwards a lot. If you can't get to Edwards because you're playing other stud forwards, like Slazinski's right there. He had a nice exhibition game as well. Looks like we got a comment too about Slazinski here. Jody's popping in saying he finally left Rick Pitino. So yeah, absolutely. And this is a spot here where you can sop up a lot of usage because like you look at these guys and it's like, I don't know that I want to pay. Like I know that they're going to be in the game a lot, but I don't know that I want to pay, $6,000 for Josiah Harris when I know there's some 3K, 4K pump plays at guard and just pay up for Jesse Edwards in this spot. So I think for me, I'm gonna stick with some of the forwards. I may rotate maybe one out of every 8 or 10 lineups, a Johnson or Wilson or a Harris, but like it doesn't feel great. I think Jeremiah Bembry at 3K, like he's someone you at least have to look at. He didn't even play in the last exhibition game. Like he's more of a lotto ticket. But it's because, like, if a couple of these guys get into foul trouble, like, you legitimately have, like, Jay, you're going to have to get in there and get 5 to 8 minutes there. I don't know, man. So, like, Vembry's at least something to look at.
That's all I got. And that's that's in bunches of 2 minutes each. So, not 8 minutes at a time. Please understand that. I'll get you a couple dimes, though, maybe make it 3. But yeah, I mean, I think it's Edwards here in a smash play. Slazinski, one of those guards. I'm
going to be so pissed
when Lauren goes for 30. Absolute monster night when like Josiah Harris has the game of his life.
No,
and we're in on it like 1 out of 20 lineups, but that's the way it goes.
Josiah Harris is going to win somebody $10,000. You heard it.
Probably. Right. You heard it here first. It could be you. It probably won't be me. But make sure that if you're planning on using Bembry, for example, make sure you drop it in those comments. A lotto play like that, we'd love to see who's all on board with that. Ofri Neve, another low price name there. But leave us a comment. Even if you're watching later on, if you're not watching live, drop us something in there. Let us know who you're picking tonight. Or actually, it's tomorrow night if you're watching live. But either way, it's tonight on the East Coast. Technically, it's after midnight there if you're watching live. So if you're hanging on the East Coast, drop us a line. Let us know you're up. Little one and done after dark action. So let's jump. Speaking of action and excitement, moving on now to a game with a nice total here. A pace up for Morehead State, traveling to play Alabama. Projected score here 84-62 in favor of the Crimson Tide. But let's start first with Morehead State, Mike. A lot of 3K value. Alabama pace up here. Loving it. Don't really care about their efficiencies. None of it matters. They're playing Alabama. This is why they are important for us to talk about. The downside for Morehead State, Ohio Valley Player of the Year, Mark Freeman, is most likely out for the season with a wrist injury. Opens it up, though, for a ton of people here on this team to maybe make a splash and make a big splash on night one. So, Mike, give us a little bit of direction here for the Morehead State Eagles.
All right, here we go. Now the excitement. We're starting to ratchet up here in the showcase, man.
Here we go.
I am either going to win a lot or I'm going to lose a lot of money here on these 3K cards. Jordan Lathan, Riley Minix. Let's start with Jordan Lathan. 3K flat. Like, we don't have much to go off of. There's no preseason games. There's not any updates. I couldn't find a coaching interview. Like, this was the hardest team to try to figure out. I do know that Mark Freeman's not going to be playing, and so that's going to open up a ton of usage. You got Thelwell and Thomas back, but their price tags we'll see. But for Lathan, like $3K flat. I mean, he's been in school forever. I think his first year was in 2018, the 2018-19 season. So gone through transfers. He sat out. He's been injured. Like, he's experienced. He's most likely going to start. Like, he has a super important role. I don't think he steps into like all of the Freeman usage. I think the Freeman usage is kind of split between Thelwell and Thomas, but he's going to be on the court a ton. So I do like him at 3K. The guy that I like even more though is Riley Minix. I wish I didn't like him this much. He's 3K as well. He's actually more of a wing forward type. He's an NAIA All-American. He put up ridiculous numbers. It was like 24 and 14 or something stupid. So he has guard eligibility, which I love because you want to pay up for all those forwards that we're going to talk about later. And I just think he's also another pivot from, if like the starting lineup comes out. I think both these guys will be in the starting lineup. But if one of them's not, like, it makes them kind of sneaky because it feels like they're going to have big roles on this team. I'm probably going to roll 60-40. I hate saying this right now because I'm going to try to figure out a way to not be 100% on one or the other guy. I'm looking to maybe 60-40 right now, Minix to Lathan.
Wow.
There might be a good chance that one of them is in at least 100% of my lineup. So
wow,
kind of scary, but pace up spot. Alabama's pacing them up. There's a lot of usage to go around. Deontay Miles at 3,400. He's the forward, transferred in from Xavier. He's going to probably start at the 5. I mean, he's an interesting option too, but you like the guard spot there at 3K. I don't want to use a forward spot at 3,400 if I don't have to. I might throw him in on one of 30 if I'm one of 30 or one of 40 just to see. He's got the obviously the power 6 pedigree there, so we'll see how he does. But yeah, guys, I'm Eric, man. Like this is terrifying. I hope the field is right along with me. Otherwise, I am going to sweat this thing out with Lathan and Minix. I'm hoping people jump on board with me. Where are you at with this thing?
Yeah, this one's tricky, right? 62 point implied total isn't exactly what you want to see, but a team that's projected to be 342nd in pace going against the number 1 fastest team in Alabama in terms of their projection. Like there's some stuff to work with here. You're talking about some of these pay down options. I'll go to the quote unquote pay up alternative for Morehead State. That starts with Drew Thelwell. 6K flat, now that Freeman's out, he and Thomas are going to be kind of the big two, right? They're going to sop up the majority of that usage. For Thelwell, he's playable at this price tag, but everything has to go right for him to really pay it off and to reach the ceiling. On the other side, though, Khalil Thomas is a bit more interesting to me, right? You get the $500 discount there. Again, plenty of usage should be going his direction. Thomas is a bit more of the sharpshooter from outside, whereas, Thelwell's, more of the playmaker. So, in this pace up spot, those threes, they tend to count a lot more when you're talking about guys that are in the mid 5Ks and below. So I think of the two, I'm leaning towards Thomas, but, ultimately these are two guys that are, getting paced up and that should see, the majority of what Freeman left behind. So don't mind going to these kind of mid-range options here.
Yeah, if Thomas ends up shooting like 7, 8, 9 threes, I mean, it could be an absolute smash there. They're going to be getting up and down so much. Imagine Mike Holland being on a DFS show and talking about a team and talking about 3 players, and none of them were priced at over 3.4K. Not one. This is what a time
this
to
is
be
terrifying.
alive.
This
What
is
a time
terrifying.
to be alive. And I'm sitting there imagining Mike with 100% Riley Minix. It's happening. I'm loving it. I'm loving every minute of it. And you should be too if you're hanging out with us here on One and Done. Be sure that you check those starting lineups. You can set a bunch of lineups like we have already. Get in there early and often. But get back and check those starting lineups. Make any of those adjustments that you might need to. Like everybody that we touched on there with Morehead State is who's projected to start for them. But make sure you're paying attention to that. Looks like we got another comment here. What's going on? Who do we got?
Yeah,
Johnny's
back saying the Manimal might be in that projected starting lineup tomorrow.
Man, y'all, I'm gonna be
Dennis
sweating. 100% Morehead State 3K guards.
Yes, let's go. This is why we do this.
Right. You know, I'll go to 80%, and then one guy will nuke, and I wish I was at 100.
You wish it was at 100. Yeah. Speaking of guys that have the potential to go nuclear, let's jump across to Alabama in this matchup. 84 point projected total. 11th offensive efficiency, 11th defensive efficiency, and of course, first in projected tempo, like Eric said earlier. Estrada, Griffin, Stevenson, Nelson, and Pringle probably going to start for this squad. Mike, a little bit more expensive here on the old roster. These guys are going to cost a little more to play. So who should and should we not be as interested in for the Crimson Tide?
All right. Well, I wasted all my excitement. My monotone, kind of went away for a minute there as we talked about Morehead State. I got to bring it back to, I got to refocus here. I don't know that I'm going to play anybody from Alabama. Like 84 implied total, but what happened last year, guys, when they were scoring 80 points? Like you were praying Javon Quinterly was like 3.6 because they played like 11 guys. Only Brandon Miller was like the one. Every now and then Mark Sears would pop off like for maybe a 5X game. So they got a ton of talent. Like the guys coming off the bench are crazy. Like you just listed the starting lineup. Like they got a bunch of dogs behind those guys too. I actually think they're underrated nationally. I'll talk about a few of them. Aaron Estrada, he's 8,900. Wow. Like, was he 25-5 last year at Hofstra? Yeah, I don't think that's going to be happening here at Alabama. It's really the Nate Oates effect, man. I've been burned too many times by his large rotations, and you're like, there's 11 guys have played in the first 8, 12 minutes of this game. How does this make any sense? So I'm going to pass on Nelson. The one guy I probably have the most interest in is Grant Nelson at 8,100. He's just so intriguing. Like, God, we love this kid, right? Like, I don't know if he's going to play 33, 34 minutes. So, that, they're going to want to see Stevenson a lot. Like, they're going to see Walter a lot. Like, they're going to want to see some of these other guys. I don't know. He's right where Klingon is. Like, maybe 1 out of 30, I guess. So, like, he's capable of 5 or 6X. He doesn't shoot threes, though, which is annoying. He has to double-double, I think, to pay this price tag off. Mark Sears, 7,100. I'm going to pass on this. Like, we like playing him at 6K, and he's kind of coming off some injury issues. So, like, if he was 6,100, maybe I'd click the button. I don't know, Jay. Like, Grant Nelson, Jay, like, you watch his highlights. Like, we love this guy. But, man, we played it all that year last year. It's like all these Alabama guys. Like, there's too many of them.
It's tough. And Estrada at nearly 9K to start the season, man. I can't see that. I could see Nelson maybe paying off 5K. I don't really have an issue seeing him getting an easy double and walking out of here tomorrow at 8,100. If you're not going to pay up, or if this is going to be one of those when you're spending up at the forward position and then really saving on some of those 3K guards that we've talked about or whatever, Grant Nelson, somebody that I would definitely consider there. And yeah, Sears, again, another guy that's just a K, 1K, probably maybe even a little more too expensive for me. Eric, some cheaper options here than Mike mentioned that have a little bit of interest to him.
Yeah, we can start with Rylan Griffin. 6.4K. He's a guard. There's a good amount of buzz surrounding him in terms of being a potential breakout for the Tide this year. But for this first slate, the price is just too high, and I think we have to wait to see that actually come to fruition before we start paying this kind of price tag for him, right? If he starts building some momentum, there'll probably be a point where 6.4K feels like a pretty solid number for him. But right now, it's just a little too high. Staying in this 6K range, we can move over to the forward spot, 6.1K for Nick Pringle. Similar consideration for as with Griffin. Not only are there too many front court pieces for Nate Oates, there are too many guys in his rotation in general, and now you have to consider the opportunity cost of not paying up at forward if you're going to roster Pringle. So, I probably wouldn't even click the name in a very large field kind of kind of tournament. And then, if we want to, continue scrolling down, find a little bit of salary savings, we can go all the way down to Jaren Stevenson, 4.4K. It's fine. He's a reclassified freshman. He got the start in that exhibition game. He could be in the rotation, but again, that's a very wide rotation. So if you're trying to find some salary relief, he's someone to consider. But I would say proceed with caution with really everybody on this Alabama side. It's kind of a gross spot for him.
Tough. Like Mike saying that he might just fade the entire side, on this one until we know a little bit more about what's going to happen here. Jody hopping back in the comments here. What do we got from our
Mike? Give the people what they want. Take your stand. Mike's ready to be hurt again.
Yeah.
Week 1, Mike's ready to be hurt.
Day 1, just done with it.
That's how we do it. Alabama looks
commentary
small.
on Bama.
Yeah.
Well,
so I like Grant Nelson the most. I mean, it's going to piss me off, though, if he goes like 12 and 10 with like 2 blocks. And it's like, what is this? Like,
yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. Like, I mean, honestly, like we love that guy. Love watching that guy play. So one more game here in our showcases. Make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons if you like it, what you're hearing, and even if you don't. Make sure you tell your fellow broskies and broskets in basketball about what we're doing over here at One of Them. This is just night 1. Sorry, this is slate 1 tonight, y'all. We're just hopping into this after all of our conference previews. If you're staying up all night because you're too excited, make sure you get back and watch all the conference previews. We previewed every single conference in the country, not the Ivy League, every single conference. We see 12 of you out there hanging out with us right now live on YouTube. Make sure you hop in that live chat. Drop us, even if it's emoji, just a thumbs up like Mike likes to do. Just thumbs. We like this one. We like salute. We like this one. This is what we call fire now. We figured through our conference.
Jazz
Mike,
hands, y'all.
Fire. Mike, give me the fire. Give me the fire, Mike.
Eat 'em up, Mike.
I'm not moving on until you give me the fire.
I already did beforehand.
Let's go. Play big, baby. All right, let's hop on to that last showcase game. James Madison at Michigan State, the one Big Ten team that you can count on to do anything worthwhile in the postseason tournaments. Michigan State, Ken Palm projected winner here, 80-63. Let's start first, though, with the Dukes of James Madison. 23rd in tempo. We like that. 23rd in projected tempo here. So, Eric, why don't I start with you? Pricing, obviously a lot lower here, but we can definitely find some value with the Dukes.
Yeah, significantly lower, right? Their most expensive player is a 5.6K Michael Green. He comes in from Robert Morris. He should immediately step in to run the point for James Madison. It's not a terrible spot. He's kind of in that weird sort of no man's land at the guard position to where I'm not exactly sure how you get to him overall. That is at least in part because I like going down a little bit further to the utility option, the guard forward eligible 4.8K Terrence Edwards Jr. and arguably the best player on this team. He brings a ton of versatility from the wing. Should be out there for 30 plus minutes, right? Like this is a guy, especially at 4.8K, especially with that flexibility in his roster spot, he's probably going to be pretty popular. But it's hard to say with the first slate of the season how ownership is going to fall. But even if Edwards is in fact popular, it'll be popularity with good cause.
Yeah, who cares, right? That might be one of those plays where you just like, 4.8K, and he's the best cat on the team. Like, slot him in and then move around him. I like the play a lot. Mike, close us out here in terms of James Madison players that we might even need to take a look at or fade. Who knows with these guys? What do you think?
Yeah, the front court's kind of emptying out here. You have Amadi, he's out. So Wooden and Bickerstaff, they're at 4,600. Like Wooden, he can shoot threes, averaged 8 points in 18 minutes. Like it's a tough front line for Michigan State. So I don't know if I can get to Wooden. I'd rather get to Bickerstaff. Like he's a transfer from BC, played him a little bit last year on some slates, and they're going to need his experience. They're going to need his rebounding. I wish he was, 3,700, 3,900. Man, it's that forward spot, guys. Like, y'all know my love for the Morehead State guards. We'll talk about some other guards that are going to be really cheap to play. And it's like, can I pay 4,600 for a forward and waste one of those spots or use a utility spot on one of these guys? I don't know. I'm kind of with Eric. Like, Terrence Edwards is easily the best play. He just does so much for this team. So looks like we got a comment from Myron, who's back. Appreciate you coming back.
Welcome back.
Oh, he's singing the WVU. Going to be interesting in the first month of the season. Very rough start. Absolutely, it's been a rough like 3 months.
Yeah, who's gonna get some run? There may be somebody that steps up who goes from an afterthought on a slate like an opening night slate to somebody that will be rostered fairly often that we're not even talking about right now. It's gonna be one of those sort of just crazy moments for this. But Myron, good to see you back in those comments in that live chat. We appreciate it. Okay, here we go. This is what I'm talking about. In Michigan State, let's get to those Spartans. 80-point projected total here tomorrow night or tonight. Let's just say first I got to stop saying tomorrow. We're in Texas. If you don't know, Central Texas. We out here in these streets. It is after midnight on the East Coast. Thanks for hanging out with us. One and done after dark action. Let's hit Michigan State though. 17th offensive efficiency projections. 10th defensive, 284th in tempo. It's kind of makes it hard, Eric, to pay 8,600 for Hoggard here.
Yeah, it does. And before we jump into the breakdown of the guards, shout out to MSU, the originator of spin that wheel. This was the team specifically at their guard spot. We were spinning that wheel all season last year. And what's old is new again. We're doing it again this year. Hoggard up here at 8.6K. Like you said, Jay, tough to click the button at this price. I do think we'll see one of these three guards go off, with the pace bump that they're getting. But for Hoggard to pay off this price tag, like he's going to have a career night to open the season. I'm not saying it can't happen, but that's a razor thin margin that you're looking at. Moving down a little bit, saving $1,200. You can go to Tyson Walker, 7.4K. This is probably the MSU guard that I would look to roster. Like I said, $1,200 in savings is not nothing, and that ceiling is right there, right? He can push for 35, 40 points in a close game. So don't mind going down to Walker at 7.4K. And then the last option here, down a little bit further, not quite as much savings. Jaden Akins, 6.8K. I mean, look, he's the bucket of the group, right? Knockdown shooter. A little tough at this price. Not exactly going to go out of my way to roster him. He might not even be in the pool just because at 6.8K, like he's got to take a bunch of shots. He's got to make a bunch of shots. He's more of like the low to mid 5K range kind of guy. So, like we talked about off the top, one of these three guys I think is probably going to pop. Just figuring out which one is really going to be the tale of how you figure out the Spartan side.
Akins is one of those guys where if you needed to bet on him getting 30 fantasy points, but at 6.8K, you're needing him to really cash in a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
And the same with Hoggard. Do you really think he's going to drop 45 points in week one and game one? I don't know. It's tough to even consider that. Mike, a couple of cheaper options here. Anything else to look at, or are we just moving on?
Nah, I think we move on. Like Malik Hall, like Sissoko, like whatever. The freshman guys, I don't know. They're gonna play a lot of guys, I feel like, in this game, and really you want to get to. I'm with Eric. You want to get to Walker. That's probably really the only guy I'm gonna play on this roster. So yeah, I'll pass on the forwards. Let's move on to the old tiers.
Yeah, the old tier section here, man. Yeah, the pace up there.
We got Jody checking back in.
Jody back in.
Tom Izzo, 6 returners. Try them in March.
Nobody
this
wants
team is going to be a problem.
Yeah, Johnny K's back too, talking about Cohen Carr, who's been all over the been all over the highlight reel with his dunks and everything. Like, yeah, I mean, I don't know this. These guards are going to soak up all of the usage, man. Like we saw it last year. And they're going to just be that much better playing another year together. And then we have another new commenter.
Welcome in,
I
Don.
don't know. Yeah, we'll just go with Don on here. Question: do y'all ever pick spreads on the show? Yeah, actually, we'll do that here after we run through our tiers. So stick around.
Yeah, get a couple of picks, and then also make sure you're following at Get Green Screens on Twitter, X, whatever, because we'll drop a pick here and there on that one as well. So yeah, make sure you stick around for Mike's bet that he teased a little bit earlier, right? Oh yeah, graphics department always behind the scenes on top of it. They're flashing at One and Done CBB and at Get Green Screens right across your screens there. As we move on now to the tiers, excuse me, 1 second.
Get a little
so excited.
Getting all choked up talking about
just
like I did in the intro. Just got a little choked up, just getting worked up. It's here. Basketball's here. I love it so much. I just love it. All right, in the tiers section that we did during the previews, that was more like top tier, bottom tier, and low tier in terms of what we rank the teams. For tiers now, we're talking pricing, okay? So let's hop into that high tier, 7,500 and above. So 7.5K and above, what we're spending. Let's, of course, we've tippy-toed around it all show.
Here we go.
Got the big six bigs here on the night. If we're going to include Jesse Edwards from West Virginia, which we will at 8,700. Here we go now. Zach Edey at 10K. King Kong of the slate in terms of pricing. Hunter Dickinson at Kansas at 9.3K versus North Carolina Central. Armando Bacot in at 9.2K. Kyle Filipowski at 9K. And then Donovan Clingan at 8.4K versus Northern Arizona, of course, for UConn. Now, somebody's exploding here. Somebody's going off, and it's going to cost to have them, or maybe even two of these, especially when we're talking about the 3K plays that we hit on earlier. You might be able to afford to slot, two of these guys in here. So, Mike, what are you feeling about the higher tier here, especially focusing on these six big men here at the top of the slate?
Yeah, I don't think there's any way someone's winning $10,000 with at least two of these guys, and honestly, I think it's three. We're gonna go over a lot of value plays here in a little bit. Like we just touched on some of those Moorhead guys. There's a lot more coming. There's just too many smash spots. Like these guys have the highest ceilings in the entire sport. Like, I mean, four of these guys are in our top 5 of our countdown. One of them could be in our top 20. Like we didn't put him there because we want to see him do it, kind of like we wanted to see Edey do it for 30 minutes. So, yeah, Eric, like I don't know, you can't get away with only one, right? Like that's kind of it feels like you're just giving away your money if you need to get at least two of these guys in there.
Not one, not two, not three, not four. Look, like there's so many appealing options at the top of the forward tier. I totally agree. Like 2 at minimum is going to be central to the overarching kind of macro strategy for this first slate of the season. Trying to nitpick here a little bit, right? Like, I worry about Clingan a little bit coming off the injury. A couple of these teams are pretty heavy favorites, right? So maybe you worry about blowout spots capping the upside of like an Armando Bacot going off against Radford, right? Or Kyle Filipowski facing Dartmouth, right? These are things that can limit the upside a bit. But like I mentioned, like we're nitpicking here. These are all elite options on this first slate of the season.
What I'm hoping for is, like somebody might win 102 to 58, but they scored 80 before they pulled anybody anyway, right? So they got theirs. And these are absolute smash spots for some of these guys. I got to play at least 2 of them and 3, like Mike was saying. We'll get to these guards, some of these cheaper guards and cheaper plays down the road that make that even possible on a slate where normally you couldn't grab 3 of these guys at the top, but some value coming up. So stick around for that. Let's move on to some guards now. I love me some guard play. I can't, excuse me, gentlemen, the old allergies. I got a fever. The only prescription is more DK. Ow. All right, so contrarian guard play here. Tyler Kolek, of course. Marquette going against Northern Illinois, 9.1K. I hit it on our top 20 countdown, and if you listen carefully in the Tyler Kolek, you can hear the birds chirping in the background in San Antonio from the zoo bench that I recorded that from. after a little snafu, but we got it in. So check Tyler Kolek's video out on our top 20 countdown. And he's the best point guard in the country on a team with the highest implied total. So yeah, I think that's probably a pretty good way to go if you're going to play a contrarian guard. Mike, what do you think about the guards here being a little different?
Yeah, I mean, I like Kolek. I don't like the price. I mean, the NIU guys are in, like Williams and Coit, which we don't know yet. You can see this game being more competitive, and just keeping him on the floor the entire time would be awesome. I'd maybe sprinkle him in like 5%. Eric, what say you?
Yeah, it's an interesting spot, right? Like we know that he's got big upside. Everyone is going to either pay up at forward, which is not going to leave a lot of people spending at guard, or conversely look at his counterpart, right? Like we'll talk about Cam Jones a little bit earlier, but there is a very cheap option or a very cheap way to get into this Marquette side. So all of that lines up as a Tyler Kolek that is going to be widely overlooked. So because of that, like, I'll have some interest in him in large field for sure.
Two of those big men in Kolek slotted in, baby. I'm telling you, man, spend up. I really, really love Kolek here. I get it. I get not wanting him to put him across the board. I understand that, but do some builds with Kolek and a couple of these big men. And
Jody's with you, man. He's flashing up there, 50 fan. Dude, especially if Keyshawn Williams and David Coit are playing, but they weren't playing their last exhibition games. I don't know. This game could get ugly real quick without those two guys.
It could, but man, sometimes you just got to take a chance on something like that. On a baller being a baller, and Kolek might be that guy here. One more thing here for this so high tier. Okay, right on the bottom of the cusp of this tier here, right? 7,600, 7,500. We got a couple Kentucky front court players. Yeah, I know Edwards is listed as a guard, but he's going to start at the 4. So consider that when you're making your rosters here. And of course, why don't we start? Okay, so we got Justin Edwards at 7.6K and then Trey Mitchell at 7.5K. Either way, a little bit cheaper options than some of the more expensive players. But is this something that we're looking into, Mike?
I mean, I don't mind. I mean, they both need to play well for this Kentucky team. The spread, I mean, it's only 17 in this game. The front court guys aren't healthy, so like you're going to have Mitchell a lot at the 5 and Edwards a lot at the 4. For me, my preference is probably going to be Mitchell just because of price. I mean, you get the $100 savings and then also the experience, like so valuable for this Kentucky team right now. Eric, where are you going if you had to pick between these two?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I would look towards Mitchell, right? Like 7.5K. Specifically, getting some leverage off of the more popular pay up options. Ultimately, Kentucky is projected to score 80 points, right? So, both of these guys are going to be right there in the pool. Maybe if we're talking about larger fields, Edwards is going to be a little bit more overlooked. So, getting that minimal ownership is going to create some leverage, and we'll see how this plays out over the course of the season, but Edwards, I mean, he's got the potential to be like a top 5 NBA draft pick, right? So, like, you don't necessarily project that upside to show itself in game number 1, but it's there, and that's something to consider.
Definitely, yeah. This is flip a coin here. Honestly, take one of these guys, shove them in there with a bunch of these low tier plays later on. But before we get that, man, excuse me.
All good, man. Take your time. What's in that?
Slow down. It's water now, guys. Come on.
It's all that heating up.
Hey, we see about 14 or 15 of you hanging out with us live. We appreciate it. Drop something in the chat. Let us know you're here. Say what's up. Junk up the deuce, whatever. Thumbs up like Mike does. Fire, whatever. Just drop it in there. We'd love to hear from you. Do it. Do it to it. That was the high tier plays. And let's drop down to the old mid tier plays, 5K to 7.4K. I don't know. Are we a lot of intriguing plays at the top and the bottom of this slate? Are we really even going to play anybody between 6.5 and 7.4? I mean, Tyrese Proctor 7K versus Dartmouth. DeJuan Harris, maybe, for Kansas, 7.3K. Iguodaro for Marquette at 7.3K as well. And then DJ Wagner for Kentucky at 7.2K. Any of those interesting? Do you like any of those, Mike?
I'll take some shots on Proctor. I'm not going to feel great about it just because Duke's depth, and I just see them smashing Dartmouth. If I had to take one of these other guys, like give me DeJuan Harris, like NCCU. They have turnover issues last year, so this guy's racks up stocks like crazy, and he could legit rack up 10 assists. Tried to get his prize pick an hour ago when it came out, and it was at 5, and they took the line down
already
15
gone.
minutes. They took it down. So really annoyed about that. But if it comes in at 6, which is I don't know, I haven't looked at it yet. I'm taking the over on it. So yeah, Eric, where are you going on with this?
Yeah, I think I'm with you on the Proctor side, right? Like 7K flat is, it's a fine number. Beyond him, if I were to take one, I'm probably looking over to Iguodaro. I mentioned it to an extent, but you're getting leverage off of Cam Jones by going to one of his teammates here. He's a double digit upside type of guy, and a player that is on a Marquette team that is projected for 85 points, right? So, NIU obviously isn't going to be playing up to the caliber of Marquette in game number 1, and they also are projected to be 260th in defensive efficiency. Last year, they finished 223rd, so that wouldn't be a huge deviation for them. And so that makes Iguodaro look kind of interesting in a spot where he's going to be overlooked.
You mentioned Iguodaro maybe being overlooked here for Marquette. How about Cam Jones, though? 6.4K versus Northern Illinois. Any sneaky value around him, Eric?
Yeah, look, I think, he's the clear misprice of the group, right? Like he should be well north of 7K, even creeping into the mid 7Ks, where he was last year for the majority of the season. So, this is a spot where he's going to be super popular. And then, beyond him, you can really get into some of these mid-major underdogs that jump out a little bit. You have David Coit. He's coming in for Northern Illinois, 6.1K. They're the team that's facing off against Marquette. Moving a little further down, Kayshawn Williams, again on that NIU side, 6K flat. So either of these guys, should see minutes. They're pivots off of the chalk that we're expecting with Cam Jones. They're both coming in with questionable tags, so make sure you're keeping your eye on the news there. But both these guys should be in the pool. Daquan Smith, the guard for Radford, 5.8K against North Carolina. A guy that should see plenty of run in this matchup, along with Brian Antoine, right? 5.7K on the Radford side. These are two ways to get a little bit of salary savings with guys that are going to be on the court for a fair amount of time. And then lastly, we'll close out with Northern Arizona. This is a team that's facing off against UConn. You got Carson Tout. He's the forward at 5.6K. You got Liam Lloyd. He's the guard at 5.1K. All of these guys are going to be at least on the court a fair amount. And if nothing else, they're all going to offer pretty clear leverage off of Cam Jones.
Mike?
If I had to take one of these guys outside of Cam Jones, I'm all in on not all in on Cam Jones, but he's going to be in a ton of my lineups. That's just too cheap. I'd probably take Tout from Northern Arizona. He's a really good player. They run the offense through him. Price tag's pretty nice. The Radford guys are interesting if they can keep it close to North Carolina.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say for sure. Those Radford, it's 142 point total in that game, and if that game is even remotely competitive, either one of those guards would fit in nicely. So I like to pay attention to that one too. I'm glad you brought that up, Mike. All right, that's the old mid tier. Now, this is what we've been waiting on, especially because of all those higher priced gentlemen we discussed earlier on. Let's get down to the low tier plays, of course. North Carolina Central and New Mexico State. Not a lot of teams that not teams that we might necessarily just shout from the rafters, from the rooftops about. But
well, hey, Jim, we actually got a comment about New Mexico State from Jody. We can flash
Jody?
that up real quick. New Mexico State has some value guys that can play.
Excellent, Jody. Jody is dialed in as usual, right there alongside of us here. We appreciate Jody hopping in the comments. But yeah, outside of Morehead State, who we talked about earlier, NCCU and New Mexico State are probably some of the more important rosters, I guess, that we should know. Obviously, Boone, Odalpo, and Butts do not play. Those guys for NCCU for a multitude of reasons. Not on the roster. Believe there's some graduates there and some other unfortunate circumstances. So, like Boone, Odalpo, and Butts are all avoid there. Don't have a ton of preseason info from that one, but CBB Almanac has the projected starters as my guy Fauntleroy there at 3K, Fred Cleveland at 4.4K, Keyshawn Porter guard forward eligibility there at 3K, Devin Gordon 3.6K, Emmanuel Izunabor at 3K at Kansas with an implied total of 54 points. Yeah, not the most appealing, right, in terms of face value, but one of those guys is going to go 4X, Mike, and maybe more. So, like, this is one we got to pay attention to all the way up until, lineups lock. It might not be great to get just a ton of these guys in lineups, but some of the later ones that we're putting together, man, just getting them in and sweating this thing out until lineups lock.
Yeah, and if I see Fauntleroy in the starting lineup, well, he'll already be in a lot of my lineups, but he's going to be creeping up into that 50%, maybe 60, 70%. And this guy can ball, so I could be featuring a lineup with 3K guys at guard, so that'll be fun times. But he has big upside, and like, who's going to guard Dickinson? Because Zinabor, he's 3K. If he can just let Dickinson do his thing and not foul him, and then maybe grab some cheap rebounds, a block a shot here, maybe get a putback. You don't have to do much at 3K. Like, I'll take 14 fantasy points from a Zinabor. So, Eric, any of these guys interest you?
Yeah, of the two that you mentioned, I like the Fauntleroy pick a bit more, right? Looking up and down the rest of this NC Central side, I mean, the other name to mention here is Keyshawn Porter, another guy that's 3K flat. He's a little bit more versatile in terms of his position and the role that he plays. And if nothing else, he's an energy guy, right? Like, he just seems to be around the ball a lot. Seems to be near the action and near the play. So, someone that's close to the ball has the opportunity to swipe one away, or maybe get a cheap bucket off of an offensive rebound or whatever it might be. So, ultimately you're kind of spinning the wheel with this NC Central side, but with min price guys, like, that's not really all that big a risk.
Need lineups. Need starting lineups.
This is why you're here, to talk about spinning the wheel on NC Central. This is why you're watching One and Done, baby. This is what you're here for. Spinning the wheel on these guys like Guy Fauntleroy. You bet your bottom.
Guy.
And Mike's talking about he's going to have 3. You're going to have at least, because you're going to have Minix is going to be in like 100% locked lineups. It's true. Let's not pretend like. Let's not. You're gonna. Well, we'll see. We'll be sure to wrap that up here. New Mexico State. Lots of question marks on waivers. How do we not? Oh gosh, how do we not? There's 10 hours, 9 hours until tip-off of the first game, and we still have waiver eligibility questions. What are we doing? Temi Odekale and Davion Bradford, obviously question marks there for New Mexico State in terms of their waivers. Yeah, I don't know, man. If you want to get on that New Mexico State bandwagon, Kentucky might be a little soft on the inside on defense, maybe a little young, right? If you were trying to find a way to get into that game and play some New Mexico State guys. Jordan Rawls, 4.9K Brandon Suggs, 4.6. Clarence Jackson, 4.5. Jalen Jackson Posey, 4.5. Kausi Easiago. Okay, Kausai Easiago. We got it. There we go.
5 times fast.
4.7K. 5 times. Hey, we got there. And then Robert Carpenter, a little bit easier to say there at 3K flat. Easiago. I'm just going to say, I can say his last name for sure, Easiago. At Kentucky there, New Mexico State is with an implied total of 62, Mike. Again, another situation where somebody's getting 4X, right?
Yeah, I found an interview with Coach Hooten, who comes over from Sam Houston State. These guys play really good defense, and he sounded like Odukale and Bradford are not going to play, so and not get their waiver. So, yeah, this is going to be a shorthanded team, probably running out. He said his rotation is probably going to be 7 to 8 players. Well, we just named 6 of those 7 to 8, and they're all sub 4.9, 4.9 or lower. So, yeah, getting into this, like Jody said, JJP, Jackson Posey, 4,500. Got a little bit of offensive game and some defensive prowess. Jordan Rawls is a transfer from Western Kentucky, which playing in Conference USA. Like he's put up some pretty decent games. I've played him a few times in the last couple of years, so have some shares of him. Robert Carpenter is like really intriguing. One, he's kind of been all over the place in his career, like researching him. A lot of talent. He's 3K flat as well. He's probably going to come off the bench. I don't know how much run he's going to get. Listening to Coach Hooten, he was basically saying they want to see what he has. So if this game gets out of control, I could see him getting 20 minutes. And he's put up some decent stat lines. So, those are just some of the guys I'm looking at. I'm tinkering around with some lineups that have, two of these guys in there. I mean, it's just 62 points. Like we laughed about some of the other totals in the 50s, right? Well, this one's 62, and like Kentucky, Trey Mitchell at the 5, Jay. Like he's pretty soft inside.
Points will be scored interior wise.
So,
I promise you. Understand that if you haven't watched Trey Mitchell play defense.
Yeah.
Not exactly the most intimidating presence around the basket. Myron jumping back into the comments like he is wont to do here. What do we got from Myron? Did a Google search on New Mexico State basketball, and there will be value players indeed. Yeah, Myron. Man. You know it, my guy. Pick one. Pick two. There's going to be some points scored. It's especially if you're mixing it up and you're paying for some of those higher price forwards that everybody's going to have. Who knows? Yeah, implied total is 62, but maybe it gets out of hand a little bit. Maybe they go on a little run here or there, and
if they get the 66, 67, Jay.
Yeah, might be worth looking at a couple of guys here for New Mexico State. All right, other plays before we wrap up this low tier. Rob Dillingham for Kentucky, 4.9K. Carson Basham, 4.7K for Northern Arizona. Staying with Northern Arizona, Oakland Fort at 4.3K. Of course, Northern Arizona taking on UConn. Xavier Amos, Northern Illinois, this time 4.2 at Marquette. And then Yannick Conan Niederhauser for Northern Illinois at Marquette as well. Checking in at 3.4K. So 3 different games there that we're pulling from in this lower tier. Eric, do you like any of them? Are you fading those 5 guys, or maybe we should mix some of them in?
Yeah, there are a couple to like here. Rob Dillingham is probably my favorite near the top of that list. Looking like Niederhauser at the bottom, right? Like DJ Wagner, he's won that battle of 5-star point guards to start. So Dillingham has put up numbers in limited minutes in the preseason. He is safer in a blowout, just given the way that they use him overall. And then for Niederhauser, like he started at the 5 for NIU in that last exhibition game, right? Like this is a team that's going to need that presence down low. They're going to need that rim protection. And, he can certainly come in and provide that shot blocking. And also, Marquette, they kind of got knocked around by bigs last year, right? So there's a lot of this same team returning. We'll see if they maybe tighten that up over the course of the offseason. But based on what we know from last year, could be a spot where we see Niederhauser, really impose his will in this first game.
We're going to see that a lot, I feel, where some of these players are just going to come out of nowhere. And you know how we're going to have known about them? It's because we talked about everybody that has the potential to do that here on One and Done tonight. Mike, anybody out of those 5 that I mentioned earlier, do you like anybody there?
Yeah, I'll roll with Eric. Biggs absolutely destroyed Marquette. So the other guy that got the start in that exhibition game for Northern Illinois, Xavier Amos. Marquette runs up and down. They struggle with bigs. Like, feels like one of these guys going to have a solid game. It's a nice price tag for those guys. But yeah, that's really about it.
Plenty of options there for you to use in that low tier of players when it's going to cost so much to play and pay at the top. Make sure you run it back and get taking your notes, I guess. So make sure you get a lot of those 3K plays and a little bit maybe more expensive, but definitely able to fill in your rosters and your lineups with some of those cheaper plays. All right. If you've been here before, you've been on One and Done for our DFS shows, right after the tiers and just before our best bets of the night, we hit the core 4 plays of the night. And tonight's core 4, I'm going with Hunter Dickinson, the man that I think will be the National Player of the Year coming out of this season, I should say. But tonight, day 1, I'm slotting Hunter Dickinson into my core 4. Armando Bacot for North Carolina at 9.2 after Dickinson at 9.3. And then, I do love me some Cam Jones action. Should be more expensive than this. 6.4K all day for Cam Jones. And then pick a Morehead State guard, Lathan or Minix. And I prefer Minix, but I could see going either way here. Slot one of them in at 3K and build around that in any single entry tournaments and use some of these in as well in your multi-entry tournaments. Dickinson, Bacot, Jones, and probably Minix, but maybe Lathan. Who knows?
Still have 5,500 there.
Yeah, you got a lot to work with.
So much to work with there.
Hey,
and
go ahead and put
Lathan.
Lathan in there and Fauntleroy in there as well.
My guy.
Well, you have to move those utility guys into forward, so it's your
build it. Build it.
We're
if
just
you build it,
buttons.
We will win. Click those buttons.
All right, Lathan. Who else do you want in?
Lathan.
Lathan.
Our guy.
How much salary do you have?
Fauntleroy.
Only 8K for 2 more forwards. I don't know if you can do a lot with that.
Gonna have a long day. We'll have a long day tomorrow, guys.
All right. We can put Tyler Kolek in there. Can we move one of those utility guys into one of those forward spots? Can we move Tyler Kolek and then get another 3K guy? Do it. I'm loving it.
We're doing it live.
We're doing it. All righty. We'll do it live. You know how we like to do it around here at One and Done. Get creative with it as we are. All right. That's the core 4. Dickinson, Bacot, Jones, and Minix, I'll say there. Or Lathan if you wanted to slot him in there at 3K. Best bets of the day now. Going to go straight to Mike for this. I had a little question about the bets earlier. Let's go ahead and give the public what they want. Mike, what are your best bets of opening night?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say people are going to want some early action, so I'll give them Georgia +5. Playing Oregon. These teams are both dealing with some injury issues. I like Georgia's roster a lot. So, sorry, Jackson Shellstead. He's actually questionable, too. Cook, their other 5-star freshman, he's out. Like, Nafali Dante's dealing with some injuries, expected to play. Georgia, I think they got a lot to work with under Coach Mike White this year. I don't think they're going to be, middle of the tier. SEC team, but just below it, not at the bottom. So I like Georgia +5, and then I like Northern Arizona +25, playing UConn, baby. It's an entirely different looking team. I don't think Clingan's going to be rolling out there for 25 minutes or 30 minutes off of the foot injury. It's a different looking team. Like, there's no Sonogo, there's no Hawkins, there's no Andre Jackson. Like, yes, they do have a ton of talent. There's some freshmen there. We'll see. What Newton looks like as an alpha. Yeah, I just think in Northern Arizona, they got a bunch of guys back, and they actually have two bigs that are very versatile. Basham can block shots. Tout, they play their offense through him, very versatile. So I like Northern Arizona plus 25. And then an underdog bet of the day, my friends, Missouri State plus 205 against West Virginia. Too much chaos.
Ooh.
Missouri State, Jay, that's one of your programs, has the MVC there.
Mm-hmm.
Just a tough, hard-nosed team. Plus 205. I like that as an underdog pick.
Sounds like Basham and Oakland Fort should get a little run as the lightning within the house here from the lights is going off. That must mean it's time to wrap this up, but not before rehashing the best bets of the night from Mike. Georgia plus 5 versus Oregon. Northern Arizona plus 25 at UConn, and then Missouri State outright. Wrong team favored. Plus 205 at Country Road, take me home. You knew it was coming one more time at West Virginia. My goodness. The comments tonight were on fire. The analysis was on fire. You know it's what you're going to get here on One and Done every night. You know, hey, tonight we had to get to a lot of guys, a lot of people that we weren't even sure were any eligible coming in. If you're hanging out with us and you stuck around for the whole show, we appreciate you. We're going to try to keep these closer to 45 minutes, 50 minutes, in that range for a slate. We're not going to want to live in the, about 126 range. You know, maybe 3 showcase games instead of 4. But we're just so happy that you hung out with us tonight. And, let's jump over to our guy, Eric the Blue, real fast with some closing thoughts.
Man, this like we mentioned off the top, the pricing on this slate is kind of tough in terms of, some guys' ability to get to value. But there are some dirt cheap options that give you a ton of flexibility, right? So the inclination is going to be to go heavy on those pay up forwards, and for good reason. They're all in fantastic spots, but don't forget the Tyler Koliks, some of the pay up guard options out there. You're going to be getting a ton of leverage by paying up even just in one of your guard spots.
Yeah.
So something to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to be all over this 10K slate. People are going to be trying to punch their qualifier ticket as soon as the first game of the year. So, using those pay up guards is a way to get different in those larger fields.
No doubt about it, Mike. Closing thoughts, the captain's comments to close it out.
Yeah, I just, echoing what you said, typically we go 45, 50 minutes. It's opening night, so, plus we don't even know. Like, usually when we're in midseason form, we know who's in, who's out. Like, like right now, it's just kind of like we're researching 5,000 players right now, trying to figure out what's going on. So, yeah, pay attention because 10 minutes, 5 minutes before lock, you could have some surprise people that are out. Maybe a surprise waiver comes through like 2 hours before the game.
It's going to happen.
Yeah, like it's going to be.
It's going to happen.
And Johnny K is in the comments right here, backing up the Missouri State pick, man. Absolutely, Johnny, man. Hopefully you enjoyed the DFS content. If you like the picks, like I said, the shows will be a lot shorter. Will be condensed. Please join us, man. We've been doing this for a couple of years now, and we're growing, so we appreciate the support.
Yeah, Johnny K hopping in there, a new commenter, as well as our returners, Myron, Jody, Kaylin, Corey. We appreciate y'all. And then the other new comment is, of course, Don. And depending on the day, he's either C-Thuggin or CT Huggin.
Thuggin on the regs, it.
However we're looking at it.
Stay thuggin'.
When he hits this DK tournament play after watching One and Done, he'll be he'll be C-Thuggin in those DK streets for sure. But Myron, Jody, Kaylin, Corey, Johnny, C-Thuggin, and Don, appreciate y'all for jumping in that comment section. My name is Jay Heinrich, the conductor of the aforementioned Green Screens Media train. He's Mike. He is El Capitan himself, the captain of the Green Screens Media ship. He is Eric the Blue, the Baron of Red of Green Screens Media at Fantasy Nap and those Twitter streets. Follow us all over there. Follow at Get Green Screens. Follow at One and Done CBB. Follow our guy, Nape at The Real Napier. Do not go anywhere as it's time to go. The lighting in
those are my lineups tomorrow.
This is how we're gonna end the night, baby. Everything's going crazy, and we appreciate you hanging out with us. Tell somebody you love them. Take care of yourself, most importantly. Let's get this bread.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drrodo.com. And until the next visit, be well and take care.